Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to Transforming 45. I'm your host, Lisa Boat. In this podcast, we dive deep into the transformative power of storytelling. I firmly believe that stories have the magical ability to heal, inspire, and connect us. That's why I'm here to bring you the incredible stories of women who have journeyed through life's ups and downs and emerged as their most authentic selves. We'll explore stories of resilience, reinvention, and the courage it takes to embrace change. It's a space where authenticity shines, where the messy and the beautiful moments of life come together to create something truly extraordinary. So, brilliant listeners, get ready for a roller coaster of emotions, a burst of inspiration, and a whole lot of love. Transforming 45 is not just a podcast, it's a movement, a celebration of incredible humans who light up the world. I'm so grateful you are here, and I can't wait to embark on this transformative journey with you. Let's dive in and start transforming together. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Transforming 45. This week, I am really thrilled to have Amanda Thebe here for a really powerful conversation. Amanda Thebe is a fitness women's health expert. She is the author of the Amazon bestselling book, Menopocalypse, How I Learned to Thrive During Menopause and How You Can Too. With nearly 30 years in the fitness industry, Amanda is a highly regarded expert on women's health and fitness. She is Canada's first menopause workplace educator, and through menopause advocacy and education, Amanda provides on-site or virtual presentations in the workplace to improve productivity, retention, and attendance for female employees, helping companies to normalize the conversation around menopause and provide support which impacts 100% of their female employees. I'm so glad you're here. We have so much to talk about. I alluded to in our little conversation before that this is a huge part of my own story. And just before I ask you the first question, I wanted to share this little moment with you from yesterday because you were on my mind a lot. And I was thinking through this whole scenario. I was like, thank God I'm talking to Amanda tomorrow. So picture this. I'm in my kitchen making dinner, and I have got to, my cycle has completely kicked my ass this month. And I go to start dinner and I'm opening up the chicken, and my husband has bought bone-in thighs. And suddenly I am hit with the most intense hot flush. So I whip my shirt off. I'm standing in the kitchen in my sports bra trying to debone chicken thighs, just asking, what the fuck am I even doing right now? And the whole time I was like, well, at least I get to talk to Amanda about this tomorrow. It will be good matter for conversation. So welcome. I'm glad you're here today.
At least you didn't throw the chicken thighs at him, Why did you buy these ones? I've just learned to just cook them with the thigh in and pull the bone in and pull the bone out afterwards. But
that is what I ended up doing. I massacred the first one and then just went, no, forget this. They are going all.
Anyway, it was great to be here, Lisa. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes. Well, Amanda, tell us, who are you and how did life introduce you to this version?
So, I'm a personal trainer and nutrition coach with a number of decades behind me. I think I started when I was in like 18, 19 doing it. So I was a secondary career. I worked for IBM in tech. And then traveled around a lot, moved around a lot. I'm in Toronto, but I'm clearly not Canadian. I was born in England, moved over here, and had a very successful business with fitness and nutrition in my 40s. And then I realized that I wasn't feeling very well, like significantly not feeling very well when I was about 42. And what was interesting is that I couldn't put my finger on what was wrong, but I didn't feel right. And I was frustrated because the whole point of my education and career was that I understood human physiology, but I had things happening to me that made no sense. I then spent 2 years in the Canadian healthcare system, which I'll say was good for me because every single doctor I spoke to, Lisa, desperately wanted to help me. I never got any gaslighting or anything. People were just like, yeah, you look terrible, but we don't know what's wrong with you type thing. Then when I was 44, my gynecologist who I went to for some other reason, he just sort of checked in and said, "Hey, is everything okay?" And so I had a breakdown in the doctor's office, and he was, "You're not losing your mind. You're just losing your estrogen. You're in perimenopause and I can help you." And it was just the idea that he said something was happening and that he could help me. I just was so relieved. And then I was like, hang on, what's perimenopause? Because this is 10 years ago now. I'd never heard of the word. And then I was then angry. Then I was like, well, why didn't I know anything about this? And then chances are, if I don't know anything about this, I bet there's a whole ton of other women out there that don't know anything about this either. And so that sent me down this path that I never saw coming. Lisa, it was never on my bingo card to do this menopause advocacy work. But it sort of evolved from my personal experience to falling down this rabbit hole and then being bold enough to reach out to doctors and going, will you sit on the phone and talk to me for an hour? Because you actually find that most experts don't have a very large social media presence and they're desperate to get information out. And so people like me are a welcome relief to them to translate this information. So I've become very good friends with a ton of experts who have been more than happy to feed me the right information, point me in the right direction. So then I started a Facebook community, Instagram, or there's like 120,000 women now in totality. I wrote the book. And then the workplace stuff just was a natural evolution from that. Like people that followed me on Instagram and read my book were like, would you talk about this as a patient advocate in my workplace? We don't want a doctor to talk about it. We actually want to know more about the definitions and then the experience and then how that might look for us in the workplace and how you can help us, how we can set things up in workplaces. And it's just been an evolution. And I've just gone with the flow, if I'm completely honest, right?
Yeah. That's well, that is how it goes generally, right? And in all of the conversations, I say this all the time, but this podcast is one of the great joys of my life that I get to talk to brilliant, mostly women on a daily basis. And our stories all have this. There is this moment where we realize I cannot keep doing what I have been doing. And then the flow happens from there. And so in listening to your story, there's so much intersection with my own. And I was an educator for 20 years. The last decade of my career, I provided professional development and coaching for other educators. And when I was thinking about this conversation this morning, this moment came up, and I'm going to get emotional. Here I'm getting emotional about it already. But I remember it was my last year when I was seconded to the board. And I will own the fact that I was a disruptor. I was trying to make change. And that was very hard in a system that is so deeply rooted to structure. And the event that happened doesn't matter, but I remember being in the bathroom, body racking sobs, so much that the person beside me was like very concerned and was trying to find out if I was okay. And of course my answer was, "Oh, I'm fine. Everything's fine." I stop my body racking sobs and go back to my desk, just keep going on with my day like nothing happened, all the time internally thinking, what is going on? Like the event that set me off was, I mean, it wasn't amazing, but in the past, it would not have sent me into full body racking sobs. And so about a year ago, I resigned from teaching. And it was because, and then I also started getting into, my kids are also in not perimenopause. My boys are not in perimenopause.
There's a new one.
I know. But I was heading into the empty nest space. And so that's where I started coaching, was in the empty nest space. But I like to take a holistic approach to things. So physical elements were always coming up. So I got my menopause coaching certification, and that's when all the pieces came together for me. And I realized that I was in perimenopause during that time, in that last part of my career, and I didn't even realize it. And although I wouldn't change my decisions, it would have been nice to have been able to make a fully informed decision, which is part of the reason why I am so passionate about this work as well. And watching your leadership has been a real inspiration. So thank you for taking up the mantle on that.
And it usually is like it can be a nothing incident that is the straw that breaks our back, right? I mean, there's like, to me, my pivotal point was after that. I obviously wasn't very well for a long time. I actually thought I had a brain tumor, like, because when he told me what it was, I was like, phew, at least I don't have that, right? Because I wasn't functioning properly. And then when I went afterwards, I met my husband for a coffee, and he sat down. He said he could see how anxious he was. And he said, how's everything? What did the doctor say? And I went, well, apparently I've got depression and migraines with aura, and I'm in perimenopause. And he went, oh, thank God for that. I thought you were going to leave me. And it was just like, and that was my moment. I've got iron knickers, Lisa. You're not going to make me cry. And and that was the bit. I took a big gulp, and I was like, oh my God, menopause doesn't just impact me. It's impacted my husband, my kids, my relationship with my friends, my quality of work. God knows how I managed to write a book during this time. Like, I just look back and think, what was going on? But there's an impetus that makes things. I was just like, I can't continue like this. I need to. And my thing was, I'm just going to be open about it, because I'd embarrassingly didn't tell anyone I wasn't feeling great, because I'm like this fitness professional and I was barely showing up to life. And so that was my impetus to change. And every woman's got a story, but it comes down to the same thing. There's a lack of knowledge, and there's a gap that we have to fill. And there's many of us out there doing it, you and I, and we're all out there saying it doesn't matter whether it's in a workplace, in a women's community group, whether you have a podcast, a book. We're trying to, from a grassroots level, we're like, everyone else has failed us, so fuck it, we'll do it, right? And we're the ones making change, but it's working. It's working. And there's still a lack of knowledge out there, but it's, from 10 years ago, I can see the difference where I'd never heard the word perimenopause, where we're now like, well, isn't that the more important thing that we need to talk about? Like, there's been a shift. And so we have to keep doing it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I often say I feel like this is the work of women of our generation, right? Every generation, there has been something that women have taken up. And for us, it's this, because and it was like very similarly, as I was heading into that sort of empty nest space, I had this realization of I had never even considered this time of my life, because there isn't a lot of narrative about it. There hasn't in the past been examples of what it looks like to live as a vibrant, as a passionate, as a like goddess, badass, all things at this phase of womanhood. But like you said, there are voices that are coming up now, which is so essential to see that, because every woman's experience is so different and diverse. And that's why it's so important to have such a range of voices and lived experiences and realities around what this phase of womanhood can look like.
And it's interesting because you sort of nailed it on the head, is that, every woman's going to experience this differently. It's not the same, but it's unique to them, but a shared experience. And I don't know, like, I just think that, I'm going to pause there, and we can edit this bit out, can't we? Because I just really lost my train of thought.
It's a menopause brain in action.
Oh, you can leave that in, actually. That would be pretty, that would be, it's going to come back to me, because it was worth saying.
It will come back.
God, it'll come back. It's fine. It's fine. That was really funny. I don't know where my brain went. Oh, I've got it.
Yes.
Sorry. So you can leave that in, because it does show your brain has come back. What I was going to just comment on with what you said is that I personally think we've been taught to dread getting older, right? You think historically, women were always past their prime, and ageism and sexism is still rampant. I don't care what anyone says. And societal expectations have us being forever young, forever thin. We lose our value as we get older. And so it never entered my mind either, Lisa. And when I was in my 40s, early 40s, and I had this thriving fitness business, and women would come in and go, menopause is kicking my ass, I'd be like, oh, I'm sorry to hear that, because I'm an empathetic person. But I was like, I don't know, it's not tangible. What you're saying doesn't make any sense, because we haven't even got it on the forefront of our brain. And so then what happens is we go through perimenopause, it's challenging. And then at the same time, we just start getting older quicker. It seems like everything changes. And so we're dealing almost with a double whammy of these unexpected feelings. And then this societal pressure not to change, or not, because otherwise we're not valued. And it drives me nuts. And I feel like I want to talk about that more. Maybe that's my next book. We're not dead yet or something, but it's true, because it's not on the forefront of our brain. And then we're hit with it. And then at the same time, we're hit with getting older in an accelerated sort of way, right? And we
Yeah.
have to fight back on both of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you okay if I read a quote to you from your book? Because I was reading it last night. It was really, and it's totally connected to what you said. And it was, I'm tired of the way mainstream media chips away at the souls of older women, doing everything it can to point out our imperfection. It's no wonder some women grieve the loss of their youth. And that is that the language around grief is so imperative and important in this conversation, to say, yeah, we have been shown the story of what it looks like to be a young woman in our culture, to be a young mother, to be that woman who is striving to be all of the things that we are taught that being a good woman is, right? There is tons of narrative around that. And the way it is, that grief, because it is at our souls, it's this moment of, well, I'm not that anymore, but I'm not dead yet. So what am I now in this phase? And the grief, I know I experienced that. I've talked about it a lot. The grief of grieving that part of life is real and intense. And at the same time, this is the most exciting time of liberation, where I am making decisions actually grounded in who I am now and what I want now, in ways that I never have in my entire life. And that is some of the power of this time, of saying, you know what? No, it's me. Now it's my time.
Yeah, and I think there's a number of reasons for that. And I think maybe one of them is that representation is changing as an outward gaze. I mean, there's obviously the internal work that needs to be done about like building that resiliency, that mindset moving forward, that we're valuable, we have strengths, which I'm happy to talk about. But then I think from an outward gaze, visually, do you remember when you were like 18, you'd be like, God, I'm dreading being 30. I might as well be dead. Like it's because it seemed like so old, didn't it? Like it was crazy.
Yeah.
And then when you're 30, you're just like, well, actually, I feel pretty good. And then I'm the new 40 is the new 20, and all of those awful memes. So when I was going into my 40s, even though I hate those memes, I sort of felt like I embodied that. But then until I went through perimenopause and just hated my 40s. But then in my 50s, I just kept thinking that just feels old, and that I'm not seeing women out there that I feel like look like me, and I don't mean vanity wise, but I mean represent me, that have like my passion and my energy. And then all of a sudden, it's just happened in the last 8 to 10 years. There's all of these vibrant 50-year-olds, every shape, color, size out there, ethnicity, that are going like, I'm here and we're bold and we want to be seen. And it's so liberating. It does feel like a burn your bra type moment, that when we're not going to just put up and shut up. And I think it's sort of our responsibility as well to be seen from a number of reasons, but mainly for the next generation of women coming up, because they're not going to stand for this crap. They're already the generation that are just going to just do something about it. Yeah,
Yes.
paving the way for them almost.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so important for them to see, and not just the girls. So I'm mom to two boys. It's important for them, for my boys also to see women who are living in their fullness, right? Women who are showing what it is to be strong and powerful. And then for the women, the young women who are coming up behind us, to know what is happening in their bodies all the way through their cycle is so essential. Because I keep thinking, you talked about it in your book and in this, not even knowing what was happening to me, right? Thinking that you had a brain tumor, this feeling like, what is wrong with me? And it's because up until this point, we haven't had the knowledge of what is actually happening in our bodies. So I'm 100% with you. I think it's so key for us to make this part of mainstream conversation so that young women and girls will know what's happening to their bodies all the way through their cycles.
And our boys I have two boys as well, 17 and 21. They're the boys that are going to be supporting us. And it's really interesting because after that incident with my husband, I just was like, okay, the way I've been has to change. I was very internalized with what was going on, and I'm a very big, bold person, and I'd lost me. I remember looking in the mirror, and my eyes were just dead. I didn't even recognize myself. I looked and I just was like, what's happening? It was I had depression, but it was so depressing to not even recognize the person looking back at me. It was really sad. That was my grief. And I just was like, where's Amanda gone? Is this just what I'm going to wake up like every day? Is this the expectation? And it was quite devastating for me. And so to actually be diagnosed with having depression because of perimenopause was a real relief. And it meant that I could do the steps I needed to take in order to regain myself. And there were multiple steps, of course, but it also required me to start having very open conversations with not just my husband about our relationship, but with my children. And it was down to the meat and bones of it. Like, I'm not going to be able to parent you today. I'm done. I got nothing. Get yourself a pizza, get takeout. I don't care. Tidy up, make the kitchen tidy. And you know what they did? They stepped up because they could see I wasn't functioning, and they were happier that they knew that I was acknowledging it and instead of pretending it wasn't happening. And it's completely changed the course of our relationships moving forward. I have a very funny story about this because I have a book and you've got it, but the front cover of the book is about being a strong, resilient woman, and it's me with my muscles out, like screaming at the screen, and purposefully, yeah, when I had shorter hair. I have COVID hair, I just let it go. and 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 because I talk about the importance of lifestyle interventions as well. And so there is an exercise component. So my son, who happens to be neurodiverse, meaning he is on the autism spectrum, has got a very small number of friends. He has two really good friends. One of them came round, saw the book, picked the book up and was flicking through it and was like, this is awesome. Your mum wrote a book. He didn't look at the title, which says basically menopause. He opened it up and he went, oh no. And my son's like, what? And he went, apparently your mum's got a really dry vagina and doesn't like having sex with your dad anymore. Oh my God.
Oh.
And he just was like, are you kidding me? And so like when his friend went, he came up to me and went, I have one friend left now. Will you just hide the book or just stop talking about menopause? But the thing is, they know what it is, and it's not a word that's embarrassing anymore. I mean, the fact that his friend knows I have a dry vagina is fairly embarrassing, but the whole topic is just another topic in our house now. And so it should be.
And so it should be, absolutely. I mean, we started having conversations with our kids about how bodies work when they were fairly young. So I remember when my oldest went to school and it was it was the health day where they were learning about sex and all the body parts. And he came home and he was like, Mom, the kids in my class were just so silly, but this is just biology. Yes, yes, my
That's my
child.
boy. That's my
Okay.
boy. Yeah, it's so great.
And
Yeah.
And so similarly, so my boys are 17 and 19.
Oh,
So right in the same stage. And I did have conversations with them before I started. I wasn't asking their permission, but I wanted them to know, look, I'm going to be talking about things that might be uncomfortable for you because my youngest is just graduating from high school now. So they were both in high school when this started. And they both just looked at me and said, this is what you need to do. It's okay. And they've
yeah.
alluded, every once in a while they'll have a little allude to a moment where someone said something to them about something that I said online or posted. But they have been remarkably supportive through the entire process, which, as you were saying, sets up the kind of men they are going to be. Right. And we need this is not a binary conversation. We need every element of the gender spectrum to be here and part of this conversation because it is something that impacts all of us.
Yep. And you know what's
Right.
really interesting as an educator yourself, like our schools, our education system needs to do better. We have sex ed or whatever it's called in where, but we have puberty, which everyone will go through, pregnancy that not all of us will go through, and then we fall off the reproductive cliff. And it would be so easy to just stick a paragraph in there and just talk at least about what the next stage is. If they can stick it in a leaflet, they can stick it in a textbook, and so women are owed it, girls are owed it, but it should just be within the full curriculum anyway. And especially when we're talking about gender inclusion in this conversation, especially with the trans community and stuff, it's super, super important. And to me, that's a very easy fix. I think where change, because to me, there's gaps in education in the school, in the medical community, and in the workplace, which is the ones I'm like looking at, but also in our general communications within our families and our peers and our friends, etc. And we're making change in the latter, and we're making change because historically, our grandparents, our grandmothers, our mothers, our aunties, that wasn't a conversation that they had. And it's interesting because I went home to the UK and I was sat around the table with my mum, my sister-in-law, and my niece. And my brother, actually, my brother sort of went out the room and rolled his eyes. Like, I should have dragged him back in. But my mum was like, I had nobody to talk to, nobody at all. And I missed that and I had to go through it on my own. And she said, in fact, you were a nightmare, which I am. I am that person. Because it was right around 2002 when the WHO study came out and said women have got to stop taking hormone therapy.
Yeah.
So I was like, Mom, take something herbal. And, and so she went through it with nothing and no support, no medical assistance. My sister-in-law is a bit younger than me and was like, well, I feel like now I have some education and I can at least have a talk with my doctor. And my niece did the whole finger wag and went, well, if you don't do something about this, Auntie Amanda, we will. And I just was like, that's exactly how I see the spectrum of change happening, right? And it just goes to show that our grandparents, mothers never spoke about it, but maybe they wanted to. Maybe it was important for them to and they couldn't.
Yeah, absolutely. So my mom died when she was 52 and she had had a hysterectomy in her early 30s. So this was never something that we had a conversation about. And she passed away long before it even crossed my mind. But I did have a conversation with my grandmother. So my mom's mom still lives. She's 92 and one of the spiciest people I know. But I asked her and I said, what was menopause like for you? And she said, that time was really hard. And it's saying it was like, I don't know that she'd ever talked about it before. And we had the whole conversation around, your mom and her brother were leaving home and not having them at home anymore was really hard. And then all of these changes were happening in my body and I didn't really know what was happening or understand. And so I absolutely agree. I think you're right. I think women have wanted to talk about it and have community, but just didn't even have the language, right? Like perimenopause is a newish word in our vocabulary. So didn't even really have the language, let alone the social space to have those conversations.
I know, but Lisa, you look at the communities where there is a word for it, whether it's menopause or the golden age or second spring, and look at the indigenous population. And
Yeah.
I've done some work with them. They're respected. Their elders and their aunts do talk about it. The Asian cultures, it's already written in their pathway. They know it's coming, and
Yeah.
they're given the respect to be older and wiser, and yes, they still struggle, but the stress and the stigma around it is makes the transition less taboo, and that really matters, I think. And so, yeah, like the language wasn't there, but it's nice to hear that your gran is still willing to talk about it, because my gran, who was like my person, passed away quite a while ago, and I remember she phoned me up once and she said, "How are you doing?" And I think I talk about this in the book. I went, "I just had like an alien birth. I went to the bathroom and I expelled everything, came out, everything. Like, and I don't know how I'm still functioning." And it was like day 30 and I couldn't stop bleeding all this time. And she went,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, you're probably going through like menopause. I know Auntie Elizabeth, she just had one big bleed and it was all over." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" So she was actually willing to talk about it, and I dismissed it because I didn't know anything about it then. So maybe that's part of it as well, right? But I mean,
Mhm.
historically, we don't have to go back more than 100 years where women were locked up in like asylums with hysteria for having
Yes.
this. But when we look at like we've made our lives harder in general, I think, haven't we? But we had
Yes.
this intersection because a lot of us had our kids a bit later. You and I obviously had them about the same age. And so they're leaving home, right? So, and that's literally like having your heart ripped out with someone's bare hands. It's like awful, but also you want it to happen. So it's this, so you're going through that. You likely have parents that are going through the aging process, and you're maybe in a good career stage as well, where like you left, but maybe, they're the anxious sort of conversations you're having with yourself. Maybe you want to go for a promotion, but you don't think you're up to the job. There's so many things happening, and then you're feeling like crap. So it's this intersection of shittiness that's happening all at once. So it does feel an overwhelming time for a lot of women. It does feel like a grief. And I think that those are the type of conversations when you have them out loud, women go, "Oh, well, I feel the same. I never knew. I thought
Yeah.
I was doing this on my own."
Absolutely. It is my favorite thing about this work is that when I am giving a talk or a presentation and you see, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, you see the change happen in a woman's eyes. All of a sudden she has this moment of, oh, I'm not losing my mind. This is perimenopause. Oh my, there is hope, right? And that's why
Yes.
the work around supporting menopause in the workplace is so important. I know you're super familiar with the report that came out from the Menopause Foundation of Canada, and that 1 in 10 women are leaving the workforce at the peak of their career because of unsupported menopause and perimenopause symptoms. That's massive.
Do you
When
know
we
what's
think,
even bigger is 1 in 5 are considering it,
yeah,
right?
yes, yeah,
74% from that same report do not feel like they're showing up at work. And we know approximately 75% of women have it,
yes,
7 unmanaged symptoms. You only need one symptom to be terrible. For me, it was migraines with aura. I had like 5 or 6 days a month where I didn't have either the migraine or the migraine hangover.
yeah,
Right. And so I can relate to that, like personally, that was one symptom. You don't
yeah.
need to have 7 for you to go, "Oh, I think that's why," you
Yeah,
know?
there's something going on here. Yeah, for
Yeah.
me, it was just the energy, like the energy suck and the brain fog. The amount of energy it took for me just to get out the door in the
Yeah.
morning and still try to do my, regular morning routine and work out and do all the things. Like by the time I actually got to work, I was like, I am done for the day and I have an entire day ahead of me. How am I going
Yeah.
to do this?
I've got
Which
nothing left to
resulted
give. Yeah.
Exactly, which resulted in my hair falling out and having anxiety attacks at work and all of the things that brought me to the decision of I can either live or I can keep working the way I'm working, but I'm not going to be able to do both at the same time. And that is where this work around building supports in, because women at this phase, we are incredibly valuable assets to the workplaces that we are in, right? When I think about all of the skill, the knowledge, the experience, plus all of the professional development that had been poured into me to get me to the place that I was at. And I worked K to 12 for the last 5 years of my career. I was supporting structures for how to support kiddos who speak multiple languages. So I knew our system inside and out from top to bottom.
Yeah.
And that's a massive amount of institutional knowledge. And that's one of the things that is so key about women at this phase is the institutional knowledge that they hold, the relationships, the connections to community. And so creating spaces where they can stay and share their wisdom, knowledge, experience is essential.
Yeah, too true. And I think that that's where filling our knowledge buckets often starts, right? It's like the whole wash houses. Do you remember? I mean, I don't know if that's like the British thing, but like in, the turn of the century or even like 20s, 30s, at once a week women would go to the wash houses with their laundry. And it was a process of using the machine, hanging on the dryers, and then they'd sit and have a cup of tea, and the kids would go and play with traffic or whatever they did then. But that was those communities where you talked about people having babies and going through all these different life phases. And it's almost getting back down to those grassroots conversations. We're all too busy even to have a coffee with people these days. It's crazy. I've sort of made something like, this is completely off topic, but like as part of my mental well-being, which is now the thing that drives everything for me, my exercise, the food I eat, the sleep I have, but the social connections is huge to me. And once a week, I go out for a coffee or a walk. I don't care, with somebody new. And I go to listen to them. I'm a talker, and I try not to talk, and I try to actively listen and really engage in conversation so that I can understand and get to meet and know new people, because that's how the world works, right? And I just think we're losing that. I think it's really sad. Social media has made us lose that. We've got a different type of connection that I don't feel is as genuine.
I agree. There is something about being in person with someone that you just can't recreate digitally.
Yeah.
And that is such a powerful idea, especially the meeting someone new. Like, I'm pretty intentional about seeing a friend during the week, but the meeting someone new is really important. And one way I did experience that was after being in the education community for 20 years, which is very insular. And then I stepped outside of it and realized there was this whole other world with an incredible amount of humans who had very different lived reality and experience from me, which was one of the greatest gifts of making that shift.
Yep.
Was connecting with new people who make me see things in different ways.
Yeah. And I need that because I'm like naturally skeptical and jaded about a lot of things, and I question a lot of things, but it comes from a good place. It's with intent. It's not just because I'm just a snarky woman that just wants to cause trouble. But I'm very evidence-based in everything I do. And for example, I just did a workplace talk, and one of the women there said something along the lines of, I only want to do menopause naturally, and homeopathy worked for me. And if my innate response wants to be, but homeopathy is pseudoscience, and I don't, but to diminish anyone's experience is inappropriate, and it's also incredibly rude, right? So I have to sort of allow space for that. I don't have to believe it, but everyone's got their own journey. And so I just said, I'm really happy that you found something you found relief from. And many women are looking for things outside of the medical community. I just wanted you to know that because homeopathy isn't grounded in evidence-based science, I couldn't talk about it today. That was the way I sort of circumvented that, because it's how I feel. But I just think that, if we have these binary conversations, and I'm guilty of doing that too, then you're sort of excluding people from the conversation. And I see this a lot on social media when we have like celebrity doctors that are very much like hormone therapy for this and hormone therapy for that, and it's becoming exhausting. And I always try and find space for the messy middle, like the gray area. And the gray area tells us that not everybody needs hormone therapy, but
Yes.
many women would benefit from it. And to me, I don't know why we can't have that conversation. And I think it's one, because the fear mongering and the provocative headlines gain attention, and these people want likes and notoriety, I suppose. And to say that maybe it depends isn't a very engaging way of like talking. And then the second thing, the reason I think they do it is because, you know, there was 70% of women in North America were on hormone therapy until that 2002 report came out, and now the number's something like 10 or 14% of women are on it. So they're trying to make up lost ground by saying, don't be afraid of hormone therapy. We know it has benefits. And I'm okay with that because I get that conversation. What I don't get is how they then bend the guidelines or they bend the conversation to suit their narrative, which is usually that they've got a private clinic and, you know, people have to pay to see them, etc., etc. So while I hold space for all conversations, I think the reason that I nip a little bit too much is because I don't like the extremes, and the extremes are not, to me, are not valid, right? It's
Yes.
almost like dogma. Oh my
Oh,
God, I'm on a soapbox. Look at
no,
me.
I'm with you. I'm with you. It's like,
Yeah.
yes, preach, sister. Just because I had just made a post about this on Friday, actually, because similarly, I've been, looking in the comments on a post, and women were just going after each other and from the extremes. And I just thought this time is hard enough. If we could just see each other and say, trust the wisdom of your body, you're going to make an informed choice about what is best for you, be it hormone therapy, be it not hormone therapy. But it's the informed piece that is really important. Like let's let all of us learn the information so that we can make a decision from an informed perspective
Yeah.
about what is going to work best for this body, because my body is not yours and yours is not mine.
Yeah. Agreed. Although, just to add to that, I still think it's completely valid to call out misinformation.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Yes.
so that's something that I know I do, but I try and do in a way that it's never personal, because I don't care about the person on the end if I don't know them. Like I have
Right.
no skin in the game there. But if somebody's saying, you have to do this and this is, the way it has to be done, then I think there's nothing wrong with then coming back and saying, this is what the guidelines say and this, blah, blah, blah. That's definitely something I think is important because women are being taken advantage of now.
Absolutely. And there is so much misinformation,
Uh-huh.
especially in the HRT conversation. It's just loaded with misinformation, disinformation, confusion.
Yep.
And so, yes, having really clear, good, scientifically grounded information is essential, right? Which is
Yep.
part of that coming from the informed place.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So just as we're wrapping up here today, what is the number one way that you help to shift corporate culture around supporting menopause and creating menopause empowered workplaces?
So I'm very much, because I come from a coaching background similar to you, I'm very much solution driven. I don't believe in just telling people stuff. I also, one of the things I do in my talks and is, menopause is a fairly dry topic. I mean, it would get dry from, head from scalp to vag, I think Naomi Watts called it, right? So, but like it's a dry topic. And so I definitely feel like when I offer workplace talks, it's informative, with some humor and personality. There's nothing wrong with having those. And I also know that people learn when there's a little bit of personality and humor in there. It's sort of nobody wants a boring conversation. But my main aim is that, one, I want to fill that knowledge gap, and two, I want to tell them the what, and then I want to tell them the how. How do I move forward from this? And so in every aspect, I'm trying to promote agency, right? I mean, I do two types of talks. I do a workplace talk for employees, and that's the one where my ultimate goal is that you only need to take one thing away from this and then go and run with it. Go and do something. Go and start strength training. Go and speak to your doctor. Go walk more, whatever it is. I also do executive level ones where they're looking for solutions within the workplace, potential blueprints for changing the corporate structure. That's a very different talk, but I still give them the knowledge behind it, like what is menopause and what are you dealing with and what is the economic burden, etc. And then we talk, it's still solution driven, because then it's like, well, what would a blueprint look like for you, for your workplace specifically? So yeah, that's sort of like and I've sort of got a method now. I think I've been doing it now 3 or 4 years, and so I've changed it along the way, and I think I've got basically a talk and a presentation that I think captures all of that, and it's well received, thankfully.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think all of it is important, and the structure around policy is such an important conversation, so that women who are now suddenly in the situation and maybe don't have the same level of knowledge, of understanding, of confidence, or because it's a difficult place to be, to go and have that conversation with senior leadership, that when the policy, although is in place, then women don't have to advocate for themselves.
No,
Right?
top tier policy is so important, right? I mean, we can
Absolutely.
have these grassroots movements because it's usually women that work in the organizations that reach out and go, would you do a talk? And then they go to the executive board and just say, we're thinking of doing this. It never comes from the executive board. But what I'm finding more and more is like women CFOs, CEOs are now reaching out going, I've had a really terrible time in menopause, and I'm prepared to get up there and tell my staff how awful it's been for me, so that they recognize that, even I struggle. And it's just amazing. It's almost giving permission. Well, it is. It's permission that this is an okay word and we can talk about it. But policy structure and change needs to happen from a government standpoint, and then it also needs to happen within the workplace structure for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you just got to the heart of why this work is so important, right? We need females, we need women in all of their expertise to stay in the workplace, so that they are in leadership positions, so that all the breadth of our voices are heard when decisions are being made.
Exactly.
Amanda, thank you so much for being here today. We could go on forever. So thank you so much. I've really appreciated this conversation.
It was so great. Thank you very much. I've loved talking to you. Hopefully I get to meet you one day, Lisa. You're only up the road, so that's great.
Absolutely. Maybe I can be one of your new people walks one day.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not coming to Barry though. It's a little bit too far. We'll meet in the middle. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us on this transformative journey today. Your support means the world to me. If you resonated with our conversations and want to uplift the Transforming 45 community, here's what you can do. 1, subscribe and share. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And if you found value here, share it with your friends, family, and anyone seeking inspiration. 2, leave a review. On whatever platform you are listening on, your words can make a significant impact and help others find their way to these transformative stories. 3, connect. Join the conversation on my social media platforms. Follow me at lboat for updates, behind the scenes, and more heart-centered content. And 4, guest recommendations. If you know someone whose story could inspire someone else, reach out and let me know. I love connecting with diverse voices that carry the power to transform lives. Remember, it is your support that is the magic in my mission. Together, we can create a community of empowerment, growth, and healing. Thank you for being part of the Transforming 45 family. Until next time, keep shining your light and embracing your journey.